So, you know this thing with like private hospitals and stuff? Do you ever get the feeling that the poor build things for the rich?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that? So, how I would be looking at that from my own perspective is the poor are forced to pay a tax. Forced upon you, right? Taxes have been forced upon the population here in Britain under the guise of for everybody. Yet, now that the poor have built something, now it's time to remove that fake tax. You'll still pay the tax, but it's now time to remove that asset from you and pass it over to the rich. How does that work? So, council houses were built under the guise of for everyone social housing. It would be cheaper housing eventually, and then it's belonged by the government. They keep hold of it, the council does, out of your tax money. And then all of a sudden, out of that tax money, they then sell it. And when they sell it, there's no more money coming into the tax pot anymore. That then goes over to a corporation, and then there's a CEO that sits at the top of that, reaming in all of this profit, whereas that profit used to go back into the tax pot. So the NHS, once the poor have been taxated and forced to tax upon them, and the working class have had the tax put upon them and everything else, and the council tax, they then push this onto the people in demand that it's for this reason. And then once they've done what they needed it to, built all the equipment, built all the nice hospitals, they're then going to collapse the NHS, and then they're going to push it over to CEOs. You see this? Private doctors and hospitals, there isn't a private hospital, much like you think of private schools, different things like that, and public schools. There's a difference in that. That sort of keeps you missing the point. But the NHS, collapse that down, goes over to a CEO, and all of the wealthiest at the moment, pay money, and then they jump the queue. And then they jump the queue. And they get seen first. So if you've got money, you are seen first. So much reading about that book today, it hasn't changed. Since back then when they were writing poems, the difference is you can now use social media to make your point. If you don't get much bite on social media, then you go stand in a town in a city somewhere and talk about this stuff. And people will naturally begin to, and that's word of mouth. I think that's how then you then begin to get an audience. I don't think people get an audience on social media as such. You go out somewhere and make a name for yourself there. It's not about making a name for yourself in this aspect. But back in the day, making a name for yourself meant it drew attention to you, but not to you as a person, but to what you were saying as an individual. And here we see it time and time again. With the council, did have council houses. You were paying into the rent. Once the repairs were conducted, there was a profit. The profit then would go into the tax pot. You wouldn't need to pay a council tax. You wouldn't need to pay that. So now they had to find other ways to try and find more tax, because now we don't have that steady income coming in. They had a boom ratio when they sold it over. It boomed and then it dropped. You want to know where the budget, £22 billion budget is? It's there. By selling it on. When you sell this stuff on, it stops the working class from being able, so it then works as, can you afford it? And with wages getting less and less and less, every single gizmo gadget in your house is becoming more and more expensive. Again, it stops you from the lower class being able to reach and grab these things anyway. So once again, it shows that it's not an equal society, because if the rich have all the gizmos and gadgets, but you can't afford them, it keeps it out of you. That is double class. That is how it is. So NHS, build it under the guise it's going to help everybody, and then quickly collapse it. Oh, look, us private people will pay for it. We'll, and then there you have it. You then have now the NHS is then given over, and that should be fraudulent. If you can't look after it, and you can't look after it to be a national health service that is fit and free for all, and you pop it over and collapse it, that is fraud. What about selling out council houses? That is fraud.
Yeah, it is, because people paid for them to stay in.
I think the idea was that you pay your rent, and this goes towards a tax pot, meaning more money, more better paid jobs, therefore more exploration when it came to finding more better jobs, getting the resources that are needed. So we call it social housing, but there ain't nothing social about it. It should be called more like imperialistic housing. So, Saffron Housing Imperialistic Trust. The anagram of shit.
Yeah.
SHIT for the, in the quotes, rather than SHT.
Yeah.
This is what you should call it. And then it begins to reflect that. This house is going to be designed to keep you ill. It's going to overrun the NHS, which they won't care anyway, because another one of their chums is going to profit off of sickness that is created by a house that is driving bacteria and mold growth and different things like that, which then over profit is then going to cause super bacteria, antibiotic resistance. And under this, greed and laziness is going to be the factor that is going to wipe out more individuals, I believe, and extinction is going to come from it, to be fair. But yeah, and once you've got rid of all of those assets, will the tax ever go down?
No.
No, because then that will go to pay wages.
Tax never goes down, does it?
Nope. Not even when you had to start sorting out your own bins. So back when I was a lad, you only ever got one bin. Then you were to recycle your stuff, and they cut a load of jobs. I remember it back at the time. There was a lot of hoo-ha about the workers that were separating the rubbish at the other end would be let go. They were, no, it won't work like that. So the taxes that were put on council tax for them to take your rubbish was to pay wages for individuals to sort through the rubbish at the other end. They then gave another bin, which then they had no more need to hire anyone to sort the rubbish. And what's more, they could sell your recycled stuff. So this bag is made out of free plastic bottles. Who's profiteering off of that? You bought the plastic bottle, threw it in your bin for free, paid a tax, actually it's not for free, paid a tax for them to come and take it. They collect your rubbish, then sell it on to somebody else, and then sell the bag back to you again.
And you have to pay for it.
So that's what recycling is. Plus they let go a whole workforce in order for this to happen, but didn't lower tax. So what then is that tax being spent on if it's no longer for the workforce?
They just use it.
So when you begin to see that for what it is, they will get rid of things, but they'll still keep the tax at the same, and it will still go up each and every single year. And then they say, oh, it's for the police service. Well, hang on. Other countries don't have a council tax. How do they still have a police service? How do they still have a national insurance? How do they still have, benefits? How do they still have a structure that is equal to yours but minus council tax? And what's more, they pay less tax. Less on fuel duty, less working tax.
They don't have any like sugar taxes or grocery
Sugar tax, grocery tax.
They have only VAT, and that goes on certain things.
Do they still have bins collected?
Yeah.
So they don't pay a council tax, but they still have their bins collected.
Yeah, they pay for the bin.
Do you still have roads sorted?
Yeah.
So that bar chart that you get received from all councils is rubbish. Do they still have social services? Do they still have libraries?
Yeah.
Interesting. So all of this stuff that then gets put over to Norfolk County Council and then gets put over to South Norfolk Council to maintain this, to do that, to do this. These things are still alive and kicking in every other nation without a council tax and less working tax that they charge their citizens. And yet we have all of this stuff and more, and the most expensive tax brackets, and we're going bankrupt as a nation.
I don't understand it. There should be enough, shouldn't there?
Still have governments. Governments are still funded.
Yeah.
Still have weaponry and technology.
Yeah.
Still have good wages.
And they have the county sort of council, then they have some district and some local halls, so those are in there as well, and they get money from the
Once I
budget
read,
from the
I'm
government.
running low on space, but once I read something that said that someone who is terrible with a little bit of money should never be given a lot. Here, it seems like anyone that's terrible with money is given a lot, and anyone that's good with money is given bare minimum.
Yeah.
So, is it really people on benefits that are driving the nation into a pothole like the government claim? No. No, I don't think it is. I think it's mismanagement of money. Way too many people to do a job that they don't do. What's the point?
Yeah.
That keeps them warm inside a building somewhere where they can pretend the whole facade of being someone at this council or something else like that.
A lot of bureaucracy.
A lot of bureaucracy. They really don't do anything for the people. Unless it's selected people or it's made to look like it. Oh, can we get a newspaper clip with this one? Just to further the there's just a fuss is basically what it is. It's a fix. And then tell me, is that fraud? To take a tax and not do a job based on that tax pot, which is more than anybody on benefits.
Yeah,
so I remember the Chancellor coming out and saying that these people, all people on benefits are, what was it, fraudsters or something like that. So then any council that take a tax paid to do a job at 48 grand a year to 21 grand a year that don't do their job, side with the corporation, that's bigger fraud. Why is that? Why do we not have a frauds team investigating like they do in the job centre? And we've got to understand something, that job centres employ a lot of individuals at high, good paid jobs. So they have benefit fraud teams, but we don't have any council fraud teams. So who's holding council accountable for any fraud that they may do? So therefore no one's looking. No one's looking.
Or a saffron company like Saffron.
Exactly, a company like Saffron.
It's supposed to be trust and it's supposed to have social, meaning.
Yeah, well, I'm going to leave this one here because I'm running out of space anyway. But I think that under fraud that it's been sold to someone like Saffron, in order for them to abuse people, I would make sure that my government would go and get all of that back. And that profit will go back into repairs, and any leftover profit will go back into the tax pot. So every time someone is paying their rent, and then hopefully we can get social housing for more individuals. There will be more money in the pot to build houses. Not just to build houses, but more money in the pot to pay builders. More money. And that will boost in morale, and that morale will make them build more houses, more faster, more better, because they'll feel good when they go into work that they've got money at the end of it and a well-paid job. Then we will be able to buy resources with that extra money. Not go into another council officer's pocket for them to do sweet FA, for them to come into your home and try and find things that go against you just in case they get caught because they haven't dealt with asbestos correctly, nor has the housing association. And this is driving in health concerns. Nope, it was sold in fraudulent terms. That's taxpayers' money that you sold that for and sold that from. Therefore, it was never yours to sell. So tell me, what is the biggest fraudsters? Which ones do you really want to be looking at? People on benefits, people in the council, or assets that are being stolen from our people that have paid into a tax system?
They create
my grandfather, my mum, anybody else. And they've paid into a pot that states that if their family member were to become ill, there's money in that pot for those people in your family. Because if you've had 1,000 people in your generation, in your family, that have paid into the tax and have not missed a day's work, then one person, 2 people, 3 people in their family would be looked after about the amount of money that they've put into that tax pot. And would be safeguarded from that. Not for it to now be collapsed and gone, because a Labour government might want to get votes, because I can assure you that way is the end. Because after you've gone through all of that, the people have whinged about benefits, they've whinged about this, and they've got rid of that, and they've got rid of this, then what is the purpose of you again? Well, you have nothing else, do you? No. Well, I don't know why we should be paying you to do nothing. Well, we write laws. Well, you know, we could put this over to courts and different things like that. We don't need all of this for that. Do you have an NHS anymore? No. Oh, but there's no need. So what, Britons will end up paying a tax for the sake of paying a tax? What is it going to go into?
Some rich pocket.
Well, some rich pocket. Another CEO to be made. And I think we've got enough CEOs, don't you? That seem to turn their backs on all the people. Not all of them, but majority of them. And especially Saffronhausen. And then they've got money to pay people in that from our ancient taxes for staff members to write how great they are about themselves.
Because no one else.
Because no one else is going to do it.
Yeah, no one else did they?
We're so polite, we're so this, we're so everything.
Yeah.
Sure. Say one thing, write another thing, do another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Say one thing, write something else, and then do something completely different. I mean, so I don't know if it's imperialistic or dictatorship. Anyway, I'm going to cut this one short, but there you are. What's your view on that? Because I know mine. What's yours?